This is Dr. Mark Hitchcock for another episode of Marking the Times. We appreciate so much when you join us each week to tune in and to hear about some updates on Bible prophecy, and I've been answering a lot of the questions people have been sending in. This week, what I want to talk about is something that I think is probably on the minds of a lot of people, and that is the topic of anti-Semitism. We were all shocked this last week when the 11 Jewish worshipers were killed in the Tree of Life Synagogue there in Pittsburgh. And it's kind of brought to the surface here in America again, this ugly scourge of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, they say, is growing in Europe. It's increasing, not just among the right wing, but even on the left wing, because what's being described today is has been called the new anti-Semitism. You know, the old anti-Semitism was hating the Jewish people, but the new anti-Semitism is actually a hatred of the state of Israel. It's an anti-Zionism. It's a view that's against the nation of Israel. And a lot of those who are in the left wing in Europe are very against the Israeli state, the Jewish state, the modern state of Israel, because they see them as dominating overlords over the Palestinians. So the old anti-Semitism of just hating the Jewish people, but also this new anti-Semitism is rising around the world. And so I thought it'd be good just to think for a moment about where this comes from. You know, it's fascinating as you look at history, the one group of people, wherever they go, who are persecuted, there's pogroms against them, are the Jewish people. And there's never been an age-long hatred of the Irish or the Italians or the Chinese or any other group of people, but it's always the Jewish people. And so we should ask the question of why is that? And I think the reason is the source of anti-Semitism is Satan himself. And the reason for that is all the way back right after the fall, right after Adam and Eve fell in the garden, God promised that one would come forth born of the seed of the woman who would crush the head of the serpent. And we know from Scripture then that God isolated Abraham as the man through whom this descendant would come. He would come through Abraham, through Isaac, and then through Jacob, through the line of the Jewish people. And so Satan set out then at that time to try to wipe out the Jewish people so that this Messiah couldn't be born. And you look at the Davidic line of King David. The Messiah was going to come through Jesse and then through David. And so Satan tried to wipe out the kingship in Israel because that's the line through whom the Messiah would come. You remember at one point in time, it was all the way down to one young boy named Joash. He was the only male descendant left in David's line. And God protected Joash to continue that line going forward. Of course, Jesus came. Satan tried to kill Jesus when he was born through Herod. Finally ended up making the people rise up to kill him, but he was raised from the dead and he's ascended to heaven now. And so Satan now is on what I like to call Plan B. Plan A was keep this Messiah, this Jewish Messiah, from coming. Now Plan B is to try to wipe out the people over whom the Messiah is to come back and reign over. Because the covenants in the Old Testament tell us that the Messiah is going to come back and he's going to reign in Jerusalem, sit on David's throne and rule over David's kingdom. It's going to be a kingdom centered in Jerusalem. So Satan's trying to wipe out the Jewish people so that God's promises can't be fulfilled. And we see this really most markedly in Revelation 12, which talks about the dragon there, Satan, and pictures the nation of Israel as a woman. And this woman in the end times for 1,260 days, that's the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, is going to be hunted and hounded and persecuted by the dragon. And so the worst time of anti-Semitism for this world is still in the future. You say, well, what about Nazi Germany where 6 million Jews were killed? Well, Satan is going to raise up the greatest anti-Semite in history. We call him the Antichrist. And he's going to be the final great persecutor of the Jewish people as Satan tries in one final onslaught to wipe out the Jews. So what we see today with anti-Semitism increasing in our world is a faint foreshadow of what Satan is going to ultimately try to do in the end times. Now, he will fail in that. God will preserve a remnant of the Jewish people to be saved and to go on into the millennial kingdom when Christ comes back and rules and reigns so that God's promises can be fulfilled. So what we see today is just kind of a faint picture of this crescendo of anti-Semitism that's going to rise in the world in the end times. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and next time I might try to answer some questions that some of you have to send in. I hope this will help you understand the world in which we live today and see these things that are happening through the lens of the Bible. God bless you. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great week.